The biggest issues right now has got to be the economy, jobs, and legal immigration. And legal immigration is not even really a third issue. It's more or less, it's all about the economy. So that's pretty much driving the growth right now.
The town of Ripley just formed one of the newest chapters of the council and organized its own Tea Party. J.D. Meadows is a new council member. He was receptive to Pace's economic message.
My uncle lost his job up here at Benchcraft. So did my aunt when it shut down and moved to China.
Meadows showed us the factories that have been closed down in the last 2 years. He said that the town has watched the government bail out the banks on Wall Street while its local economy crumbled.
Nobody wants to see the large international bankers get richer. It is a struggle. Most people around here, whether they're Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, are fed up with the government in some way or form.
We sat down for lunch with the Ripley chapter of the council. We asked the new members about the council's core issue, racial segregation, but got a surprising response from Meadows.
As the Bible says, a house divided cannot stand. The same applies with a nation. If a nation is divided, it cannot stand. The media plays races off against each other when the races should be united for liberty.
After lunch, Brian took us aside and told us that many new members joined with what he calls elementary school politics.
In a way, the council it's about like a college. You know, after you get in and you start reading our beliefs and you start getting our platform, and you'll start growing more and more.
The economy, the bank bailout, and the war get people in the door, he says. Once inside, the council tries to educate them about racial threats to America.
The mixing of cultures, whether it be, it could be ethnic, it could be religious, it could be language. We want to preserve the Caucasian Christian culture that's made up the United States and the South traditionally.
America has changed. Tens of millions of whites voted to elect the first African-American president, and tolerance and diversity are publicly celebrated as national virtues. White supremacists face major challenges, but they are convinced that racial identity remains the most powerful force in American politics.
I think it's become more racial. Because of the vote, we're not in a post-racial America. It's becoming more racial. Race has become a bigger issue today than it's been in 20, 30 years. I think the Tea Party movement is the beginning of a very good awakening, and realize we only need to wake up 10% of the people to win this thing.
As this right-wing populist movement spreads more and more anger and more scapegoating, and more elected officials and media demagogues encourage them, it's more likely that violence will occur.
Chip Burley in that excerpt from White Power USA by filmmakers Rick Rowley and Jacquie Soohen, available in full at the Al Jazeera English website. Well, for more on the story, we are joined now by Chip Burley. He is a senior analyst at Political Research Associates and the co-author of Right-Wing Populism in America, Too Close for Comfort. Welcome to Democracy Now! Chip Burley, what would you add right now to this piece this very chilling piece that we've just watched? You've spent time in Montana, in Idaho. What would you like to add?
Well, I think we need to get away from the idea of the word extremism, because it creates the false impression that what is going on here is just somewhere way out there among crazy people. But the whole point of this documentary is to say, look, there are these sectors. There's the center political sector, there's these right-wing populists, and then there's these insurgent and revolutionary right-wing, Klan Nazi people. And there's a dynamic there that we are part of, all of us in America, a legacy of racism that can be exploited on the racial fault line at any moment. So people need to understand that this dynamic is not going to result in the Klan or the Nazis taking over America and having an armed coup. What it's going to result in is a dynamic between the Republicans and the Democrats, for sure, in 2010. But more importantly, what's happening now in states like Montana and Idaho and Washington is that immigrants and other communities that are being scapegoated are under attack. And as the economy continues to wobble, we are seeing more and more anger being directed not just up at the government elites, but down at people who have very little ability to defend themselves. And so the Democrats' idea that let's stir up even more trouble and laugh as the Republicans get pulled to the right ignores the fact that, you know, the families that I talked to are being harmed by both the Republican and the Democrat and the teabag movements.
And Chip Burley, you have a piece coming out in the Progressive magazine next month, and in that you argue that centrist Democrats should stop trivializing right-wing populism. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you just say, look, they're all crazy, they're all nuts, we don't have to pay any attention to them, they're not real, that does several things. One is that it obscures this dynamic that's occurring that Lenny Zeskin explained so well, that there's a struggle going on in these right-wing movements right now, and the white supremacist organizers are trying to pull the teabag movement way towards more aggression and a more ideological position. But also, I talked to organizers who said when they try and reach out to white communities where they have in the past had some traction around issues like immigration or issues like racism or even organizing around the political economy and the environment, that they're getting doors slammed in their face because, you know, people can hear the Democrats and I'm sorry, but the Keith Olbermanns and the Rachel Maddows making fun of their neighbors and them, and they don't want to hear from progressive organizers.
Chip, last year, the study that came out, or the report that came out of the Department of Homeland Security from Janet Napolitano that got fiercely attacked by Republicans in Congress, so much so that she had to take it back, talking about the rise of and the danger of white extremism and nationalism in this country. Can you talk about what happened with that, the importance of that report, and then the pushback?
Sure, and first I'll bet you a $25 donation to Democracy Now! That you can't go through the rest of the program without using the word extremism. I hope you win. Look, the problem with the report is exactly that. The report, 50% of it was completely accurate about the recruiting on the right in the military and the white supremacists stealing supplies. All of that was accurate. But the report went on to claim that the evidence that there was a need for government, you know, surveillance and monitoring and intervention was based on ideological concerns. So, you know, I may not agree with libertarians, but most of them aren't breaking the law. I don't agree with right-wing populists, but most of them aren't breaking the law. So the report was actually quite valuable until it started to conflate political ideas with potentials for violence. And we see Joe Lieberman and his committee talking about this with, you know, homegrown radicalization and violent extremism. These are terms used by the center to marginalize dissident on both the left and the right.
And can you talk about the impact of the right-wing media, figures like Glenn Beck, and what this does?
Sure. I mean, what people like Glenn Beck and Lou Dobbs do is they provoke an even angrier response. They whip up this anger, but they point it towards scapegoats. And the scapegoats are overwhelmingly not just liberals, but people on the left, community organizers, Mexican immigrants, Muslims, all kinds of folks that are out in middle America, and some of their angry neighbors are looking at them as the cause of this problem with our society and with our economy. So what you have is this problem here with Sarah Robinson and David Nyward have talked about, and especially the book Eliminationists, where once you have a right-wing populist movement, and you have political figures in the Republican Party embracing it and saying they're the real patriots, and you have media demagogues whipping up more and more anger, this is a very volatile mix. It is, in fact, without using the term incorrectly, the mix that turns a right-wing populist movement into a neo-fascist movement. And the political theory now about fascism is that it's a right-wing populist ultranationalist movement that turns into a more militant and aggressive mode. Now that's, it's not going to happen here. You're not going to have a mass fascist movement. But along the way, this anger being focused on scapegoats by the Glenn Becks and the Lou Dobbs and the O'Reillys leads some people to decide to beat up their neighbors, and it leads others to decide to go out and kill their neighbors, and that's already happened.